Good afternoon. My name is Tracy Nyer, and I'm with the Virginia Small Business Development Center Network. For those of you that are not familiar with our organization, the Virginia SBDC is a partnership program between the U.S. Small Business Administration, George Mason University, and local host institutions throughout Virginia. With 26 locations across the Commonwealth, we provide training and technical assistance to small businesses in their local communities. Our one-on-one consulting services are available at no charge. Today's webinar, Hosting Virtual Food and Beverage Events Focusing on Producers, is one of our educational offerings. If you aren't able to attend we are recording today's presentation. So I just wanted to go over a couple of housekeeping items. We are recording today's presentation. It'll be posted on the Virginia SBDC website. If you have any questions during the presentation, you can type those questions into the Q&A window or raise your hand, and at the end of the presentation, we'll open the session up for questions. Our presenter today is Chris Van Orden. He is the International Trade Specialist at the Virginia Small Business Development Center, which supports Virginia exports with a particular focus on the food and beverage industry. Previously, Mr. Van Orden served as Manager of Marketing and Beer Strategy at Alexandra's Port City Brewing Company, where he guided new product releases, developed operational processes, and provided strategic growth insights for one of Virginia's largest craft breweries. At the Virginia SBDC, he manages the Craft Beverage Assistance Program, CBA, where services are designed to promote sustainable growth and resilience amongst Virginia-based producers, from startups to established and expanding companies. So without further ado, here is Chris.
Thank you very much, Tracy. And thank you all for joining today. Let me get our presentation pulled up here. So today we are going to be speaking about hosting virtual food and beverage events. So in particular, we're focusing on food and beverage producers here. If you happen to be a retailer, we're going to be hosting a similar event later, but a lot of the information will be applicable to you as well.
Chris, we're not seeing your slides yet, if you have those up.
Ah, I apologize.
That's okay. Just wanted to make sure that you had those up before we get started. There
you are. You're seeing me now?
Yeah, yes, we are. Thanks.
Great. See, there we go. First lesson already. We're going to cover a broad range of issues today. So we're going to be speaking about how to structure an event, to their communication strategy, day of logistics and everything. So there's a lot of ground that we're going to cover. And without further ado, we're going to get started. So first and foremost, your event structure. This is the first thing that you need to think about when designing your program. Virtual events can take many forms. So before you do anything else, you need to decide how your event is going to function. What are you offering to your attendees? So this means, what exactly are you selling with this event? You might be providing instructions, either real-time or written, expertise or insights, an opportunity to interact with your staff, or you may just be selling your products yourself directly. So you need to decide what the offering specifically is. Who is your target audience? Now, who you're trying to reach is going to help to define what the best model is, the pricing, the marketing of the event, and be aware that the audience for this event may not be the exact same audience that you're normally targeting with your products. What is included in the ticket price? So does the ticket, whether it's free or paid, include the cost of ingredients? And if so, how many, for how many people? Is there a specific product format that is going to be for this event? So are you creating a sampler pack or a limited edition version of your product that participants are going to be able to access? What, if anything, are participants tasked with bringing themselves to this event? All of this needs to be decided when you're setting up your event. How should your attendees prepare? So do guests need to have a specific place to work, or they need materials on hand in order to participate in this event? How much time should they be allocating to this? What platform are they going to be on? All of this needs to kind of be built in on the front end. And then what do you want to achieve through the event? This is for your own purposes. There are, deciding what the goals are, and there are lots of valid goals here. So either, simply Attendees are buying your products, whether direct from you or through a third party. They may be paying for your expertise. You may be promoting brand loyalty with this event or reaching a new audience. You could be rewarding your biggest fan. Whatever you're trying to accomplish, you have to make sure that the structure of the event matches your goals here. So with that in mind, there are lots of kind of formats that are out there for food and beverage producers that are kind of tried and true at this point. These are just common ways that people have organized events to date. So guided tasting is probably the first one that comes to mind. So in this instance, you would work with people to taste through your products in real time. Ideally, you'd have a compelling theme to share this around. So whether it's a side-by-side analysis of similar products, walking through your core lineup, whatever it is, you're just tasting the things that you make with your audience. For this format, you'd want to make sure that you have a speaker who's knowledgeable about the products themselves and can convey details beyond those that are readily available online. If all you're doing is having somebody go through and read the descriptions that are on the website, that's not going to be the most compelling format. People want that additional level of knowledge. That's why they're attending the event with you. A hands-on tutorial. So for this format, you would be showing an audience actually how to make something. So there's a more participatory format. So depending on the type of business you are, this may work better than others. If you're a brewery or a winery, you're not going to be able to show them exactly how to do that in real time. But if you want to show people how to make a dish, how to make a proper cup of coffee, how to make a cocktail, those are the types of hands-on tutorials where people will assemble not only the ingredients, get the products from you, they're also going to make something themselves. An expert Q&A is a really fun format, especially if you have a devoted audience. So some of your most dedicated customers would love the chance to pick the brain of the people behind their favorite product. So if you have someone on your production team, a head brewer, your coffee roaster, your master baker, whoever, who can talk about process in an engaging way, this is, first of all, a fantastic asset. And you should consider using them for this type of event. People love to understand the process behind the products that they love. Pairings. So you likely have trusted partners whose brand and products you're happy to associate yours with. You can grow your audience both for this specific event and in a larger sense by partnering with another business and combining your draw. So just some of these are pretty simple and things that you may be doing in person already, but beer and chocolate, wine and cheese. I mean, these events design themselves. And if you have a retail partner that you might want to steer people towards, they can help you to get your products into their hands. So something, especially in this time of year, think about paired dinner bundles. If you have a restaurant that you like to work with closely, if they are offering 3-course meals, why not partner with them with your beverage or something to that effect. Seasonal programming is highly effective. You probably all know this from in-person events, but right now this would be top of mind for everybody listening in. So capitalizing on existing occasions, especially when people's choices are limited as they are right now, can be a big draw. So think about events like going through Thanksgiving prep with someone or coming up with holiday pairings. People are really looking for ways to engage around the holidays and have some sort of festive spirit. Online virtual events can be a really great way to do that. And finally, converted mainstays. So by this, I mean, if you already have a robust events program, consider how to bring that online and retain or even grow your audience. So if you have something that's successful, just bring it online. Social programming, volunteer efforts that you may have. Lots of folks have trivia or workout classes these days, heck, knitting circles, whatever you do that makes you can find a way to bring it online. And again, people are looking for outlets right now. So just make it easy for them to do this from the comfort of their own home. They want to engage with you, make it easy on them. So that said, you still do have to work to build an audience for your events. So attracting customers to join a virtual event is different than doing it in person. You need to adjust your approach for this particular setting. So always, as with everything that you do, look to your existing customer base to start. Go out to your closest followers first. They're the ones who are most excited and they're most apt to engage with you. So reach out to your mailing list if you have one. If you don't, consider having one. That's just a larger strategy right now. Go out to your social media followers. If you have a membership club or any captive audience that you already have, go to them first with this. Give them the first opportunity. You can also promote events like this through your direct-to-consumer DTC sales that you do yourself. So if you're selling your baked goods or your coffee or your beer or wine to customers already, promote it to them during that sale because they're already making the effort to find you directly. Chances are they're going to be more likely than just random, followers online in engaging with you. They're going to want to have that opportunity to directly interact with you. That said, you shouldn't be shy about using this as a strategy to reach out to new audiences. The scale that you have online dwarfs anything you can do in person. So specifically, if there's a territory that you service that may not be your immediate backyard. So say you're a distillery or something based in Roanoke, but you just opened the Charlottesville market. Well, consider programming that speaks specifically to that audience. Student and alumni groups, say, create some programming based around that. This is an opportunity to tailor something to audiences that you don't have a way to capture already. Leveraging partnerships. So whether or not they're involved in the event itself, your industry connections can help you to promote your event. Retailers and suppliers may be willing to support these online events that you're creating, especially if the audience can turn to them to procure your products. So if you have a shop that is a really good advocate of yours, even if they're not directly involved in the event, they may be willing to put it out to their followers because a proportion of them may come to buy your product from them, and everybody wins. When you're promoting your event, make sure that you're clear with both the details and expectations. This goes for everything, but especially here, avoid rolling out half-cooked ideas. Customers are more likely to commit when they know what they're getting into. Specify the details, exactly what the event's going to look like, and the plans for communication, how they're going to be hearing about you, about the event from you. You're going to head off a lot of headaches if you're really proactive on that front, rather than getting emails saying, when am I going to get the link for this? Saying you will get the link the day before the event or an hour before the event. You can steer, you're still going to get those questions, but making sure that you specify up front, you will save yourself some time on the back end. Tailoring your outreach for online settings. So there's more than one way that this can go here. One, like I said, use the scalability of online events to broaden your audience, knowing that some in-person regulars aren't going to follow you, but just the number of people that you can reach all at once online is massive. That's part of the appeal. However, you could also tailor your outreach to make it very intimate. So for a Q&A with somebody on your production team, let's say, you may want to keep that audience very small and have it be the type of conversation that people don't really get to have most of the time with the people behind the scenes of your company. So in which case you would want to tailor your outreach to make it really focused on your most devoted followers, keeping the audience to 10 or under, let's say. It's a very different type of event. So you want to make sure when you are doing that outreach that it fits the event that you've decided to put together. And then invest in the process. You should determine upfront what resources you're willing to mobilize to support this event. Whether through it's just your sheer effort, earned media, social media, just the time spent promoting it, or actual financial resources and advertising, targeted advertising online, mobile ads. Some people might even use third-party promoters like marketers or influencers. You want to make sure that you know what resources you're willing to commit to this and the returns that you have to see to justify those. Ideally, there's going to be a match like any other promotion and marketing that you have. But again, knowing that this process is going to look different than what you do for the rest of your business. Now, managing communications. Since this event is going to be hosted online, there are more details to track than a typical in-person event where people purchase a ticket and ideally show up on time, ready to participate. There's a distance involved, and you need to be clear and communicative upfront and often to avoid the headaches that just naturally come with these types of events. Marketing and outreach, this is on the front end. So By now you've settled on your format, so be clear what people can expect from the event to make life simpler when you're trying to get people to register. Have a landing page for the event, whether it's just on your events calendar, but a specific URL that you can steer people to. And you can create a shortened URL using some of the services that are out there, bit.ly, for instance, being one of them, and create a very handy URL. So if somebody can't link directly to it, if they see it somewhere else, or it's easy for them to communicate with other people, it's an easy way to steer people to the registration process. In your marketing and outreach as well, you should be very clear if there is a cap on the audience. People will be more motivated if they know that only 20 people can sign up. They might sign up a little bit earlier. You have to, if you do have a cap, make sure that you immediately update all of your promotions everywhere that your event is posted when that cap is reached. There's nothing more frustrating than when an event becomes oversubscribed and you see 100 emails coming in saying, oh, I thought this was live. So make sure that you have current up-to-date information everywhere that you're promoting this event. For the registration process itself, when people sign up, you should have a standard email ready to confirm enrollment that you're either going to have sent out automatically upon registration or manually at the end of the day. Everyone who registers by a certain time gets the email that day. Whatever the process is, have a process, have your standard language that goes out with all that vital information. In that email, there should be the details for how people will join the event, how they should be buying the materials, whether it's directly from you, pick up on site, or third party, shipped, however it is going to be, or through your retail partner, or just out in the general marketplace. Whatever it is, people need to know how to get the products that you're trying to sell. That is the point of all of this, of course. There are lots of options here when it comes to the way that you're going to set up people and the way that people are going to interact with the event. But you have to make sure that you have the elements in place before you even start marketing this, because if you're figuring it out as you go along, there's going to be confusion. Before the event, you should have a reminder that goes out specific time before the event. 24 hours is a pretty common timeline for this. That email should go out with the login instructions and a link that could either be unique to that specific user or only circulated among your audience, depending on the service and the way that you're using and the way that you decide to manage your registration process. But whatever it is, that email before the event should contain that information, even if you've already sent that once. And you should share any updated information for the event itself. If there's any format changes, if there's an adjustment on the speaker, make sure that's included in there. People want to know what's going to happen when the event starts. Ideally, the email is going to get people excited enough that not only if they've registered are they going to show up, but they're going to recommend it to a friend, and you may see a last-minute boost in registration. This should be exciting. It's not just dry conveying of information, just, hey, we're excited to see you tomorrow. Here's what you can expect. And after the event, this is something that a lot of people forget. You should be sending an email out, thanking everyone for attending, sharing any follow-up information that you might have, recipes, if there are discount codes, whatever that is, action items. So if you have another event that you want to promote or a new product releasing, whatever that is, that news that you want to keep people engaged, that should be included in this event. And that's also a time to solicit feedback. We'll talk a little bit about that later. But so there's at least 4 stages for communications that you're going to have to include when you're building into these events. None of this has to be difficult, but you should have them all laid out before you start putting this event out into the marketplace, because once you're underway, things get busy and it's very easy to skip a step and lose track of things. So the logistics of registration. How you designed your event is going to determine how you manage enrollment. So one of the biggest things to think about here is if the event is free or paid. So both are entirely valid, knowing that you're going to see people behave differently if it's free versus paid. If it's free, you're going to see lots of people excited to sign up, but a much smaller percentage then may actually turn up to the event. If it's paid, a lot of people are going to decide to pass. They say, oh, I don't need to spend that money. But money is a commitment device, so you might see more turnout at that point. And what's included with that ticket price too. So if it is paid, does it include the product? Are they just paying for the educational component, whatever that is? If registration is limited, making sure that the registration process is clear on that front. On your registration homepage, say capped at 25 people for this intimate conversation. That needs to be built into the registration process, both on communication aspect and on the technical side. If you have a cap, depending on the platform you're using, you have to make sure that's in there. And it's evident to people that when they go to register, if that cap has been reached, that has to be built into the actual platform and the process itself. If there is ID required, obviously, if you're doing an event that involves the sale of alcohol, chances are you by now have figured out some way that you're doing online retailing of alcohol if that's permissible for your product or with your partners. Make sure that you're accounting for that. You have to be above board on everything that you do when it comes to events. And that is just with everything else, alcohol complicates things, but there are ways, especially now with loosened, the regulations at this time having been adjusted. Online alcohol sales are more permissible than they've ever been, but be aware of what you're doing. Make sure that your process is in full compliance. And then if your paid registration includes alcohol or includes the materials, for instance, we've discussed that already. The interface. So some event hosting platforms have registration functionality, but it's up to you if you want to use theirs or have a separate process, then you just send around a link. Again, depending on the platform that you're choosing, there's different levels of sophistication there. So for instance, you may want to make participants register directly with you through your own ticketing program if you have one for events. If you want to be able to get them directly into your listserv, if you need to check IDs, or if you have a payment process for your ticketing. Make sure that whatever the process is, that it is clear and that you have someone dedicated to handling this process. Even simple registration processes, there are going to be questions that come up. So somebody needs to go through, troubleshoot, understand how all of this works and manage the communication that's going to come in, because there will be questions. The framing of the event. So you may want to think about framing your event as educational. You are conveying information to people during all of this. I think that you have to be aware, again, with the regulatory considerations involved, depending on what product you're selling. You're selling information. You're selling, an experience for people, and I think that that's engaging. But if you have other sales involved in that, make sure that you know sort of where the lines are for the selling of the product versus selling of the information or the experience. Another thing to be aware of is just the fact that you're taking personally identifiable information. So if you're capturing people's names, email addresses, credit card numbers, that you have make it clear that you're going to keep that private, that you're not going to sell it to anybody else. Some people are more nervous about that than others. I think everyone is becoming more comfortable with online experiences, but if you have language in there saying we will not sell your information, it just might make people a little bit more comfortable. So finally, registering versus paying. We've already talked a little bit about this, but depending upon your format, registration and payment may be two separate processes. So just be aware of what you're trying to accomplish here. And this goes back to what you're trying to accomplish and the event structure. Ideally, once you've settled on that event structure, everything will kind of flow logically. But there is more than one way to do this. So work through the different scenarios and see what works best for your event and for your business. Now, the technology aspect, this is what puts some people off of the events, but it really does not have to be overly complicated. The platform that you're choosing here, there are lots of options these days. Chances are you've already used some of them yourself. We're currently using Zoom. There are other providers that are out there, but look into the different options that are in the marketplace currently and decide what's right for you. So the functionality of all of them, what, if any, limits there are in terms of the number of participants or the length of time that you can do a presentation. For some of them, there may be a free tier that's available up to half an hour beyond which you have to pay. And that's fine, but it's an investment that then you have to make that decision if that's the right platform for you. If you want to have special features, some events, this is going to be a real asset to you. So things like breakout rooms where you have the full audience split up into separate rooms where half go into one room, half go into another room. If you have an informal Q&A with your head brewer and your head salesperson or something to that effect, that's a perfectly valid thing, but you have to make sure that your platform can do that for you. The same thing goes for web-based versions. Make sure that people don't want to have to download another piece of software. So make sure that the ease of use aspect of the platform is really paramount, and go through and test drive all of these things. Get on the platform, do some dry runs for these things just to work out the kinks. If you want to get a comparison of some of the most popular services out there, the New York Times had an article on June 24th called "The Best Video Conferencing Service." It is just a very dry but very factual breakdown of the pluses and minuses of some of the leaders in this space. But use what you're comfortable with. Really, it comes down to the best experience for the participants, and it has to work for you for what you're trying to accomplish. So speaking of testing things out, you should, before this event comes, test drive all of the hardware components that you're going to be using here. So your computer, make sure that your computer is fully charged. If you haven't, used this platform before, make sure that it works with your computer, whether you're using the web version or a downloaded software version. Make sure your camera looks good on here. If you don't have a good camera, get an external camera. Same goes for the microphone. It has to be it doesn't have to be professional grade, but it has to look and sound good. People aren't going to stick with it or attend the next session if you're crackly and dark. And the same thing goes for the lighting that you're using. So this does not have to be fancy. There are all types of professional tools out now. There are lights that are designed specifically for doing video conferencing. You can certainly invest one if you like, or you can just use something that you currently have. So right now I'm using overhead lighting, which isn't always great because it casts shadows on your face. But I also have a light behind me, and I'm going to quickly show you what it looks like when I unplug it, and then I'll show you what the light looks like. So if you'll allow me, this is what it looks like without that light in, and I'll show you how simple this light is. It is just a lamp with a bare bulb, not directly on my face, but it is just enough to add a little bit of brightness. Everything's clear in the foreground, and it can be as simple as all that. When you're doing your event, you should also make sure that you have another person. I'm very fortunate to have Tracy on here with me. So there should be a 2-person team for the actual presentation of your event. So one person, in this instance me, delivers the presentation. So they are focused specifically on delivering the content, whatever that may be. The other person is very familiar with the platform, understands all the technical aspects of it, manages questions. They may be the person in charge of slides if the speaker doesn't want to manage that. Admitting people into the webinar in the first place, if that's a step that you decide to include in here. Both people should be co-hosts, so they have access to controls, but make it clear who's doing what in the conference. And then finally, the settings. So the technological settings. When you go into the platform, they are very robust these days. They have all kinds of settings that you can adjust for your event. So for instance, everyone coming in on mute so that there's not just noise, ambient noise every time somebody steps into the room. There are different layouts for the screen. So make sure that people are seeing the thing the right way. So I'm sharing my screen currently, which is why you can see my slides. Whatever settings you want to have in there, a waiting room, whatever it happens to be. Again, try all these things out, see what the platforms can do, and just work through it. Once you get the hang of it, it's going to become second nature, but do be conscious that there are settings and maybe the sort of default settings may not be right for you. Now, the day of the event, choosing an appropriate setting. So there are a number of requirements and things that you want to keep in mind when you're deciding where exactly you want to hold your event. So some of you may decide to do this at your facility. Certainly if you have a compelling setting to be in there, if you're in front of your bakery or you're going to be in, in your vineyard, that's very exciting and people love seeing that. Or it could be somewhere very informal, like at home. Wherever it is though, you have to make sure that it's going to be quiet. You can't have it where there's going to be activity behind you. It's fine if you're on your production floor and there's people walking in the background, but nobody wants to hear a forklift backing up all day long. It also needs to make sure that it's well lit, whether it's natural lighting or lighting like this. And when I say well lit too, you should also be, when you're doing your test runs, you should make sure that you're doing it at the same time of day because it doesn't look the same. So whatever it's going to be, it needs to be well lit. You should have good power sources. So you should have handy plugs that aren't going to be stretching in the way of somebody else if they're working around you. You'd be amazed at how many times I've been on webinars where the lead person drops off because their computer died. Not a great look and not exactly the most compelling programming. You should also make sure that you have good angles. When I say good angles, think cinematography. This is, this is kind of a close shot. You should be seeing kind of from here up, filling up most of the frame. That may be different depending on what you're trying to accomplish here. If you have a banner or something you want to put behind you, that's fine too. You also want to make sure that you have your notes, that whatever the framing of the camera is, that you have either hard copy notes or a second set of notes for yourself, your script, so that you can look at them as you're presenting. So I'll show you all. I have an iPad just off screen so that if for whatever reason I'm not able to look at notes on the screen that I'm presenting on, I have these over here. Or if the entire computer fails, I can jump back on quickly. So all of those things need to be thought through as you go through, as you're setting up your presentation. You should be logging in early to make sure everything works, being in at least 15 minutes early. You and your partner to troubleshoot things, talk through developments, just go through and feel comfortable in the space before people start showing up. There's nothing worse than trying to log in for an event and the person who's leading it is late from some other event and you can't log in. You lose people that way. And there will be early birds who tune in as well. You can decide if you have a waiting room, you can admit them right as you hit your event time, or if you want to let them early for informal chit chat, depending on the event, that's fine. Looking for emails and chats during the event. This can be something that's easy to forget once the event gets underway. It's easy to get involved and not really pay attention to what's happening on the side. But ideally, the second person is also going to be keeping an eye if there are questions that come in, whether by email or Q&A or the comment section, whatever the format, about not being able to see or hear the event, not being able to get into the room or their link not working, whatever it's going to be. That needs to be addressed, and you have to have a plan in place for that. This should go without saying, but again, another thing that you'll encounter a lot when it comes to online events, people forget to turn off their phone. People will get phone calls as they're going, and sometimes they won't realize that it's them. They'll be looking to see which person on the computer is forgot to mute themselves, and oh no, it's me. That's not the best look. Now, when you do actually get to the presentation itself, up at the top, whatever the event format, reiterate the run of show. So by this, I mean, you've already shared pretty much all the details. People should know what to expect, but make it clear what exactly you're going to be doing in this class. So for instance, today, right, I'm going to be doing a 45-minute presentation, talking you through the ins and outs of, hosting virtual F&B events. And then we're going to have a time for a moderated Q&A at the back end. Tracy was great and told you about asking your questions in the Q&A box, and they will be asked at the end. People need to know the way this is going to work, because there are lots of ways for it to work. And if they're not aware, they're going to try and unmute themselves and ask questions. And if that's not what you want, it's going to be, a little disruptive. So I'm going to just show you quickly what it might look like if you're doing a demo in this instance. So this is something that I have experienced myself when it comes to these events. So rather than being nice and close up, you'll see here, there are ingredients for making cocktails just off screen here. And if you pardon me one moment, I'm going to stop my share. There we go. So if I was doing a cocktail class, having a wider shot so you can see my hands rather than just here up, and then having things just off the edge of the screen that you can bring into the shot when it's time to use them. But so if you're doing a cocktail class, let's say, the first thing you'd want to do in that class is say, hey, we're going to be walking through this cocktail today. And so here are the materials that you want to have on hand if you're going to follow along with me. I've got my mixing glass, my bar spoon and strainer. I need, these 3 bottles. You're going to need an orange and a peeler. You use this glass and a cocktail jigger. Just something as simple as laying it all out on the front end and then having the camera framed properly where it's going to be engaging. People can see what you're doing. If you really want to show them, well, here is how you peel an orange. You're doing it front and center. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. You don't need to have the camera moving around, but you do want to make it so that people can see what you're doing, feel like they're a part of the process if they're engaging with you. But if you're just lecturing, you can have it set up a different way. So make sure that whatever the layout and the framing, the way that you're doing this event, the way that you're actually presenting it, matches what you're trying to do and matches the format and the content of the event. So with that, I'm going to bring you back to me because I am not making a cocktail today, at least not on camera. Instead, I'm going to finish showing you my slides here. So hopefully everyone can still see this. That's the day of details. Then finally, the next steps. Again, this is a part that people often will forget. The event is over, they're on to the next one. It's really important to follow up with people because once they've engaged, they're a captive audience. They have bought into a degree. So something we spoke about in the communication section, thanking your guests for joining you, just being appreciative is always nice. Then sharing any of the follow-up information, again, recipes, discounts, anything along those lines, including that action item saying, here's our next class, or here's the next product release that we're doing, or the other event, or whatever that piece of information is, the next thing for them to do to interact with you. And then you should have a feedback mechanism. This just helps you improve. Ideally, once you get the hang of the first one, every one you do is going to be better, but you need to have a way for people to give you that feedback. So including in that follow-up email a 5-question survey saying, how much did you enjoy it, 1 to 5? How likely would you be to do it again? How likely would you be to recommend it to friends? And then leaving an open-ended section saying, what else would you like to see? Hey, I really had a great time, but I wish they spent a little bit more time on, or didn't move so quickly through the process so that I could follow along more closely. And I would love to see a version where we do this other cocktail, let's say. That's really helpful because that person's more likely to buy in if you make those adjustments for the next time. Reviewing metrics and feedback. So this can be really important for that sort of continuous improvement side. So compare the registration numbers that you had, the number of people who signed up for your event against the attendance for the event, both from at the beginning of the online virtual event that you did and at the tail end, if you can track both of them. Ideally, you're going to see a higher percentage every time as you go up. And again, knowing that people pay, they're more likely to show up. You should track to see, okay, what are the resources that we put towards this and what did we gain from it? Whether, that's the revenue that we had or we have this many new people on our list or whatever your goals are. Making sure that there's a match between the effort and resources that you brought to bear on this and the return that you saw from it. Refining the model. So as with everything that you do, both your in-person events and just anything else that you do, there should be improvements that goes along with this. So, you can adjust the way that you host your events, but whatever your changes you're going to make, the goal is to improve along key metrics. So whether it's revenue, the margins for the events, attendance, and approval. And you can track these things over time. Growth. So charting the path to growth. With time, you're going to find a model that works for you. The first one may not be, go the exact way that you want, and that's totally fine. I think everyone appreciates that we're learning on our feet. We're building the airplane as we're flying it. So it's okay if your event doesn't go perfectly. I've certainly had my fair share of snafus, and that's totally fine. But making sure that you don't make the same mistake twice, and find the model that's right for you and your business. Just because one of your peers is doing something that's working for them doesn't mean that it's right for you. So find the model that fits, iterate on it, continue to refine it. And then once you find what works, you can create a series based around that and bundle those series together. You can line up additional partners and bring in additional people to grow your audience. And both growing your audience for these events and in the larger sense of, hey, you've suddenly got new followers because you co-hosted an event with somebody from another industry, and now you've got new fans. And that's the bottom line for all of this. So just remember that these events are tools to help you reach customers at a tough time and create deeper bonds with them. That's what you're trying to accomplish here. People are really looking for ways to interact with their favorite producers, and are becoming more and more comfortable with online formats. So you should too. Even when things go back to normal, whatever that happens to be, these types of events are here to stay. They're still going to be around. People have invested in them. People are comfortable with them in a way they weren't a year ago. So why not be comfortable doing it yourself and find a way to build this into your business and keep generating revenue and keep reaching your audience. So with that, I will open things up to question. And thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Chris. Those were some great tips for folks. It definitely got me thinking about things. One of the things I would add on to your suggestion of, framing your space is most of these tools give you the ability to do video. So if you want to get on in advance and videotape yourself so you can make sure that what you think they're seeing, they're actually seeing, might be helpful for folks. I know both Chris and I beforehand were talking about how daunting this platform can be before you're really comfortable with it. And I know that's been one way that has made me more comfortable, is kind of understanding the fact that you don't think about what somebody else is seeing. When I first started these webinars, I was not looking at the camera when I was reading my scripts because my script was on my other screen. And it wasn't until I was watching the recording that I went, oh, I need to put that piece of paper at eye level with my camera so that they don't realize I'm over here reading something rather than talking. So
yeah, that's a great point. It can be difficult to watch yourself. I know I don't like to go back and watch myself speaking. I'm fine, in the moment, but going back, and it can be difficult, but you can learn a lot of things that, oh man, I really need to make sure that I am addressing the camera, that I'm not, framing it where I'm cutting off the top of my head, whatever that is. Like, well, it looks good when I start, but by the end I'm hunched over. Simple things like that, like any kind of public speaking. And again, people will value authenticity. They don't, especially working, looking through their local favorite producers, they already understand that you're, a local brand, and they really want to interact with you. They want that authenticity, whatever that is. So don't feel like you need to come out with anything flashy, but there's no reason not to, make it look good if you can.
Okay. So we do have some questions in the chat window. Can you repeat just one more time for folks the New York Times source on the pros and cons of different platforms?
Absolutely. It is the New York Times had an article on June 24th of this year called "The Best Video Conferencing Service." I will, in fact, see if I can find this.
I can also, as I said, I'll be sending out a follow-up email, and I'll include the link to it in that email. So
there you go.
folks,
that's exactly
that.
it, right? I mean, this is the follow-up emails. There's an action item that we get from that. Now, you could say, maybe I did this on purpose, or I left out a key piece of information, so I had something to go there. But the honest truth is I found the article right beforehand, and I didn't find a way to build it straight in. But this is important information to share after the fact. So.
Absolutely. So we do have some other questions. Are, sorry. Some of them have to do with, and if others want to chime in, if you want to raise your hand, some questions about what others are doing. Do you know of folks that are creating testing kits for people to purchase for the virtual experience, and how do they go about doing that?
Sure. Definitely, we've seen people who, for their events, will create bundles, right? They'll say, hey, depending on what the product is. So they might do a limited edition product only for this event as a hook to get people excited. So, if you're a bakery, I'm going to do a special product, or if I'm a coffee roaster, I'm going to do a blend that specifically for this event and that you're going to debut during this event. That's totally fine. You may say we're going to create a sampler pack where you can buy, 2 each of 3 different beers all at once, and we're going to taste through them. So you and somebody else can sign up for this event and you get to taste through them easily instead of buying 3 different 6-packs. Obviously, when you're doing anything different from the way that you normally do it, you're investing in it, even if it's just time. But that's fine if it's a hook to get people signed on board. You just have to make sure that if you're creating something specific for this event, a new product or a new version of your product, that the amount of work that goes into it has enough payoff on the back end. But for sure, I've experienced events where somebody says, hey, we're doing a cocktail. We're going to sell you all the ingredients for the cocktail in one handy kit. And you don't need to go out to a second store to buy all the other things. Well, it comes with an orange if you need an orange peel. So I've definitely seen that.
How about different platforms that people are using to sell tickets or products in conjunction with the virtual experience?
Sure. There are all kinds of services, and I don't want to get into too many particulars. There are, ideally, it's something that you're comfortable using. So if you have a platform that you like using already for in-person events, let's say, you may be able to work with them to ticket an online event as well. Say, hey, buy this ticket through our existing events platform where we do other, our in-person events. And if you sign up, you'll get the link one day in advance. That's fine. But again, some of the registration platform or some of the video conferencing platforms have their own registration processes. So if you're going to do an open event, you can have them registered directly in there. And some of these are pretty robust. There are so many services out there. I don't want to get down into the weeds of any, the virtues of any particular ones, but I would say go to some of the technology, magazines or online groups that may be out there. Wirecutter is one that I turn to often if I'm trying to find the best versions of something. So the New York Times article that I manage is actually Wirecutter is included within New York Times now, and they'll review the best platforms, the best ticketing sites. So just see what's out there. You don't have to do all this research yourself because you can rest assured that thousands of other small businesses have the same question. So somebody has rounded it up.
Yeah, I think the one thing I would add to that is when you're especially with the confirmation emails, remember that people have spam boxes. And so looking at maybe sending an email both from within the platform and then your own email, whatever you're doing, because I have found that when I think people are getting email that is going out from Zoom, they're not actually getting those confirmation emails. Yet if I send the same thing from my Gmail account or my GMU account, they actually get the email. So unfortunately, we're also having to deal with some of those technology challenges along with it.
Yeah.
Any brands or retailers utilizing influencers in their virtual events that they're holding to host to drive attendance?
I think some people might. I think it depends on the industry. If there's a dedicated, marketing person on staff, they may not go out to influencers. But I think there are some folks who, rather than have an in-house capacity for marketing and promotion, they may turn to influencers or something else. I know earned media being something that a lot of smaller F&B producers will turn to. So if there's somebody who has a lot of sway, they may say, hey, we're going to send you the press release and we'll send you a sample. And that may be enough to get somebody interested to promote an event. I think it's entirely up to the small business if it's worth it on their end to invest in third-party promotions of any sort, or do it in-house. Just depends on the scale, the scope that they're trying to reach here, and how hard it is for them to acquire their audience otherwise. So I think there's people that are trying everything under the sun at this point, and I'm sure some folks are going down that route, but there's lots of ways to reach an audience and get people signed on.
Are there additional questions out there? Some of these questions here are just asking the group if other people are doing the virtual hosting as a way of marketing their products, or are they driving, trying to drive more to consumer sales online? So that, does anybody else on the call want to speak to any of these issues, or if you want to raise your hand and ask your questions out loud, I can also do that. We always think that this whole Q&A and typing your questions takes away from that personalized experience. But when I offer to unmute people, everybody says, nah, I don't really want to do that. Hold on a second. I'm going to go ahead and unmute Amy.
Hi. I am wondering if there are any samples that can be posted along with this additional posting and recording about some samples of what other people are doing, kind of as inspiration.
Other successful, like actual online events that people have done, you're saying? So like, you know, if there's
they don't have to be the whole experience, but some samples to kind of maybe get some of those creative juices flowing.
Sure. Yeah, I think we can look up to see if there's any instances of folks who have done a good job on this front. I think, you know, for instance, we record this and post it after the fact. I think a lot of people will not record their events per se, but if there's any instances of companies that have been at the vanguard on this that may have some lessons that you can learn directly from them. Amy, would you mind telling me what, or at least what sector your business is in?
I'm actually a bakery, and I was thinking about doing a limited series of how to assemble some holiday type things for folks.
I think that's very engaging. I think, you know, certain products lend themselves more towards one format than another. And I think the baking, I mean, we all know that sort of lockdown baking has been very much a thing. And there's a lot of skill involved in that, and people are willing to take those on as projects. So I think doing the tutorial aspect of this can be really engaging for folks. And even if it doesn't work out for them, it will show how much value you have as a professional baker. So they can, you know, buy ingredients from you, but also have a finished product or something to that effect. So there are some formats that work really well for things like baked goods, the follow along aspect. So yeah, I think we can see if there's any instances of something that might be that might have worked in that vein.
Yeah, I've only done pre-recorded YouTube instructional videos. I haven't done live or interactive. So I'm a little nervous.
It's all right. I mean, people are excited about this stuff. I think people, especially with something very technical like baking, they want to be able to pick your brain. So I think doing it in a tutorial / Q&A front, really informal, but very small. You know, people are going to, hopefully people would value your time, right? So if you can make it say, participate in this event, learn how to make holiday scones, but you also, you buy a pack of 6 scones at the same time so that you could taste mine versus the ones that you made, for instance. So there's, you know, multiple levels of value that can go to people. And I think I will also say, just by virtue of you raising your hand and asking a question, you'll be fine. If I can talk in front of people, you can talk in front of people.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. Well, we don't have any other questions in the Q&A window. So I am going to go ahead and close us up. We're almost at 3:30. I will check the Q&A window one more time before I close out. But I want to thank everyone for attending today's session. Chris gave us some great information during the session that hopefully you can take away and do your host your own food and beverage event. You'll be receiving an email after the session with a link to the recording and the slides, and I will include the New York Times link. Also in that email will be a link for an evaluation to the session. Please help us to continue to improve our sessions by filling out the evaluation. If you'd like to fill it out now, I've put that in the chat window. More information about upcoming training sessions throughout the state can be found on our website, virginiasbdc.org. Also on our website, you can find the business recovery webpage, which we developed to help business owners continue business operations during this challenging time. The detailed guidelines cover a broad range of critical considerations ranging from safety and workplace guidance to financial assessments and marketing communication tools. While you can use them by themselves, they were also designed ideally to be used in collaboration with a business consultant in your local small business development center. And we have offices located throughout the state. And if you're not really sure where yours is located, you can find that again on the virginiasbdc.org website. Well, it doesn't look like we have any additional questions, so we're going to go ahead and close out for the day. Thanks again, Chris, for some great information. Thanks everyone for participating.